Hello, Lex, and welcome to the Scaling Deep podcast.
Thanks for having me, Lisa.
Yeah, it's so great to have you here. You're like one of my longest and best members of the Scaling Deep Society. So this is extra fun for me because I get to share you to the world and just learn more about what's going on with you right now in your membership. So yay, super fun. Why don't you tell us a little
Yay.
bit more about you and how you got here
Yeah,
without
I'm Lex.
like the starting of being where I was born, and I always laugh at that
I
question.
was born on a farm. Yeah, my name is Lex. I run a company called Super Easy Digital. I have a membership called Growth Trackers, which I'm sure we'll be talking lots about. But my background is in growth for tech companies. I did that for 10 years in Silicon Valley, helping them get through issues like user acquisition, user conversion, customer churn, things like that. And now I do that for small business owners, helping them find their clients in repeatable and sustainable ways.
Love that. So one of the things I love is that you've got a really great name. I love growth trackers. It's easy to remember. I always feel like that really is a catchy way to explain what you do, but it's not complicated. So I just want to point that out because I mean, having I think a simple, fun name is not an absolute necessary, but it's kind of a cool thing to have right away. So I think you nailed that. So good for you.
Thank you. My mom and I came up with it on a walk right before we launched the program. We were just spitballing, what the program was about and some of the keywords around it. It's really, naming is super hard.
It is super hard. And I mean, I think you can change it. Like I'm one of these people who kind of believes that when you're in the early phases of things, you can experiment by also starting. You don't have to stall on that stuff. Like I've changed from the Profitable Membership Club to the Scaling Deep Society. And it was just, I keep doing things like that in my business. So I think it's totally fine until when you're larger, you have more of a challenge, but when you're small, like totally. But if you can get it right away and spend a little bit of time on it, awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I worked with, companies that changed their whole name. I worked with Gusto. They used to be called Zen Payroll. They changed the whole name of the company, with a significant amount of customers already bought into that company.
Yeah,
So it's
interesting.
possible for
Yeah, it
sure.
happens. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's not impossible. The other thing that I think is interesting, and I wanted to point this out based on our earlier conversation, our pre-interview, recording conversation, was the fact that you come from a growth background. And while you didn't come into this, at least into my world with a mega list and a mega program already, like you were just like, worked with me with a VIP day, figured out your launch strategy and all that. You started small, but you do get the importance of sales. And one of the things I need to stress to the world right now, because I was just saying that a lot of people don't quite get that and what it takes to sell one to many, even though you've got some simpler strategies of helping people sell one to many, we'll talk about, but you come with that like real honest background and saying, look, you've got to learn this thing. And it's like you can just know your thing. You've got to understand that component of it. So I think that's always been why you were successful from the start. So yeah, kudos to you for.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, as a business owner, as a membership owner, you have to be able to market and sell your product. Like it's just a non-starter to not be able to do that. And so you're right, though. I mean, I have been able to do that from a small list, from a small audience. And I work with a lot of people who are in that same boat, right? Where they have sort of a small engaged base of clients, right? Or referrers. And so it's absolutely possible to tap into that. And actually, that's a big part of what I focus on when it comes to growth, focusing on growth over marketing, which we can talk more about. But it really comes down to no matter what size business you are, whether you're just starting out, whether you're like a giant Fortune 500 company, which I've worked with, matching your resources, the amount of effort you can put into something to the value that you want to get back.
Totally. That's like the efficiency equation, which makes a big difference. It's like you can't spend more than you're earning in sales kind of idea, right? So it all comes down to this, like the efficiency through which you can convey the message and get people to know, like, and trust and make that buying decision is how you can then bring profit into it, which is the only way to keep it going long
Yes.
term.
And so It's interesting because even though I totally agree that you need to understand sales and that in order to have a long-term, scalable, profitable membership, you have to nail that at higher and higher levels. When I started, I actually just sort of went around that by appealing to people that I already had relationships with, my one-on-one clients, my business partners who had already referred work my way, my past colleagues from tech, and really working those relationships. That's how I got people in as my like early adopters in my membership. And then now I'm like looking at how do I level up my sales game? How do I improve that sales page? How do I improve my email sequences? How do I improve the webinars and the onboarding and all the things that make the thing really like big time and scalable for me?
Yeah, yeah, because it's easy to know who your people are when you are small, and actually gets even harder to know who those people are as you're bigger, because then you just start looking at your list and your audience instead of thinking about, oh, these 20 people this would be perfect for. So in some ways you lose that ability to really understand who you're creating for as you get larger. So you have to bring that focus back into it, but it does also just change how you do things, because you are looking at a more of a bit of a numbers game. And in some ways, like, you start to track the conversion rates and all that, like how many people are looking and paying attention, how many people are looking and not buying, and understanding, well, what
Yeah.
isn't being communicated properly on mass versus having a personal conversation. So yeah, that's totally true. Yeah.
Yeah. And every launch, I'm at like my fourth or fifth launch now because I'm still live launching, right? I do a doors open, doors closed for the membership. I used to spend a lot more time doing like high touch sales with every person who was demonstrating any level of interest at all, whether they sent me a DM or they clicked a link in an email or whatever, came to a webinar. And I'm trying to back off that effort with every launch, right? And now I have people joining without ever talking to me, which is like wild to experience. As you're saying, you're like, that's crazy. You didn't even send me an email. We've never met. But it's also really encouraging for like the leveling up of my sales game for sure.
Yeah. Great. Well, why don't you start by telling us a little bit more about what your membership does for people? And then I'm going to ask you more about how you kind of got started and what happened.
Yeah. Growth trackers, I like to say that growth trackers helps you crack your client finding formula. So I teach people a method for generating their lead generation recipe. We look at what channels you should be targeting people on. We look at who you should be targeting, what audience segments. We look at how you should talk to them with your messages and your offers. I teach a methodology that I ran for many years successfully in Silicon Valley. It's an experiment-driven approach called Test, Track, Tune. And I teach also marketing techniques. So you learn both the method for testing your marketing, and you also learn the basics of marketing in my membership.
Nice. So who do you think is ideal for your membership? And maybe you could share a little bit about your journey of figuring that out, because that's one of the things I think a lot of us, we either know that this is challenging for us, or we don't know, but it's drastically affecting our sales. Like in my case, it's always this, oh, is this for me because I already have a membership? Or is this for me because I haven't launched yet? Like, it's that confusing, or am I even ready enough? Someone asked me recently, here's my situation. Do you think I'm ready for a membership? So, that kind of stuff is fascinating, because not only do we have to try to figure out maybe who those are, we also have to figure out when we're not communicating that well to them. I help all three,
Yes,
by the way.
it's
but
I'm
but
here
it's
for you.
it's very interesting.
Wherever you are, I'll meet you there. It's funny because this is a problem for, again, any size company. Like I encountered this I worked with companies like Toyota and Nissan, giant automotive manufacturers that you are probably familiar with. They still can't grok who their customers are, right? Maybe someone inside there can, but there's plenty of people working at these companies that they don't know. They can't describe that person to you. It's like, someone who needs a car. No, not quite. So I think it's a challenge it's honestly an ongoing challenge in all of our businesses. It's an increasing level of clarity that you're getting over time, right? You start with something really generic, maybe demographics focused, industry focused, role focused. Over time, you get more and more clear on like the behaviors that are really indicating whether or not someone is in a place where they can work with you.
Yeah.
The motivations, the pain points, things like that. You get more of a sense of who they are as a person that makes you guys a good fit together. I call it the audience offer match. I will say I have a really deep background in understanding your customer. That's a lot of what I was doing in growth. It's to your point about like, it's a big growth blocker. It's a big growth blocker. So it was almost always the thing I was doing inside companies before we were running tests about how to change revenue and stop churn and things like that.
And I actually came about it via copywriting though, which is interesting because copywriting is that you need to know who you're talking to and how to describe that problem or pain they might be feeling and the transformation they want. So it's there's different ways to come about it, but it's still important to kind of understand or to like know how to experiment, even like from a messaging perspective.
Yes, it is. It's funny because it is absolutely like the first thing, the most foundational piece to get right. It is also like extremely boring and overlooked. And so it's funny, like I know you asked me how I came up with this concept for my own bit, like membership, but I skip it in my membership as a topic because I think it's easier to get burned by the fact that you don't know the answer to that, to like strike out a bunch and then to be like, maybe I don't know who these people are and I need to get more clear on that. And so for me, I have like a bias for action and I like to like to test it that way, to surface it that way and to hone it that way. In terms of my membership, I launched my membership initially targeting my one-on-one clients who I had a depth of understanding in. So I designed it around them. They are solo business owners or duo business owners, 2-person teams, generally in the service-based businesses. So consultants, creatives, coaches who work with clients, not customers, right? So they're generally doing higher ticket, more involved one-to-one services. And they're having trouble booking clients. They're not sure how to take charge of their lead generation. So the pain point that they have is that they're great at what they do. They don't know how to connect more people to the value of what they do.
Right. Which is a lot of people's problems, but you're handling it more on that one-on-one versus that online, like trying to brand everything perfectly. Right. So that's the difference a little bit. Yeah.
I think they're quite different. I've been thinking a lot about this actually, because I've been talking with a lot of creators who are selling lower ticket things, courses, memberships, lower ticket memberships, ebooks, things like that. It is, I think, a slightly different game. So I don't necessarily teach you how to sell 100,000 ebooks online. Some of the approaches that I teach are going to move across the board, but it's quite different to sell services than to sell products. And so I focus more on the services side.
Yeah. What are some of the challenges you've come up with in your membership? Like, I know, of course, there's lots, but what would you say some of the bigger things are having, like, from launching to now, like that you've discovered along the way? Just you're so fresh in your journey, and I know you're like a real deep thinker about this stuff. So I would just love to get you to answer that honestly, as honestly as you're willing to share.
Like what's been challenging for me, like the roadblocks I've hit up against. Okay. So I think one thing is onboarding. I think onboarding members successfully is really tricky because especially me coming off of myself being a one-on-one service provider, you want to handhold everyone through everything. You really helped me with that, Lisa, sort of backing off my approach in that and thinking about how can I scale this level of support, right? The one-to-many.
I always ask that. What would you do if you had 100 members question, which helps people think about how you would manage it? Because you know what, you get that even at like over 30, I think in a lot of cases, you start to experience that. Oh, I haven't thought about that person for a while. Like you not forget who they are, but if they're not coming up and popping up and asking questions or anything, you actually have to glance once in a while. But then you're asking yourself, do I need to glance once in a while? Because it's a self-driven program. It isn't you've paid me tens of thousands or even thousands of dollars that you feel more obligated to make sure they get a result. You are selling something to them. They know they're joining a group and it's up to them to show up. But is resisting that a little bit well, at first it's good to know because you want to know how people are using it. But then afterwards you do have to let go of that a little bit, right?
Yeah. You do have to let go because, in some ways people have to show up to the table with you for sure. Yeah. But I also, especially, I'm not even a year into my membership. I launched in August. So I also want to know, as a former UX designer, right, who used to design experiences for people that would benefit the growth of the business, I want to know like why you're not coming, why you're not taking action on something. Is it that I'm not presenting it in the right way? Is it, I really emphasize live sessions. Should I be emphasizing templates over live sessions, right? Should I
Yeah,
be
like how is
emphasizing
it that they
hot
need
seats
to learn?
over?
Yeah.
Yes. And I think that's like, that's a big challenge, because you go into your membership with an assumption on that solution, and you're testing that live with your members. And so you also helped me with that by really pointing out that I needed to not over plan how I was going to execute my solution and adapt to what they needed, which I'm doing every month, right? Which makes the program stronger for them. And I'm able to shape it around actual human behavior and not just on my assumptions of how people learn
Oh, I know. I was
and
just going to
grow.
say making assumptions, right? Like I love showing up live to calls. That's the thing I like the most. And I don't mind a bit of training and learning how to do something, but I think I always want live support in a program. Like I will pay a ton for live support and I will pay nothing for anything else unless I have to learn a thing. Like I just bought a how to do a 9-grid thing. It was a Canva template. And I was like, okay, I am not like a graphic designer. So if I try to hack this, it'll take me 5 hours, even though I think I'm going to do it for an hour. So I bought that. It was like, oh, great. I just have to update my things in it. Still took a long time, but still, I mean, could you imagine if I hadn't had that? But honestly, like I will only pay for live support. So I assume that's what everyone's like. But then I go and hear from people who are like, I have been going through your Build a Revolutionary membership course in your membership. And they're like, it's so great. It's helped me so much. And they don't show up to any calls. And that took me like actually over time, just them popping in and saying something unexpectedly, or just emailing me something, which I didn't know about. So I made an assumption that that wasn't as valuable as, or I started to doubt the value because you don't always hear from the people who aren't showing up and telling you the thing. So that I think it's really important to just give it some time to see what it is that's working.
Yeah. And that's another challenge, which is like, it can be really challenging to get the feedback from your least engaged members,
Yeah.
and to know, is it you? Is it that they're busy? Is it that they have 5 kids? Did this thing fall off their priority list as a whole, like the goal that they, came into the program with? So it's really challenging. And so again, I'm always changing up how I'm soliciting that feedback and how I'm trying to get that information. So I'm not working off my assumptions.
So what are you doing some things to get that feedback and get that information?
Yeah, I do a lot of one-on-one outreach. So I do a lot of DMs to people. If I haven't heard from you in a couple weeks, I message you, hey, what's going on? Just wanted to make sure you saw this last workshop, whatever's relevant for them. I do a lot of live sessions. So if people come to the live sessions, I try to throw in a couple questions about, hey, what do you think's blocking you from taking action on the thing that we're doing right now?
Yeah.
Or, the goal that you have in front of you or whatever, or, hey, is this time working for you? Is there a time zone issue? Trying to solicit the things that I have questions about. I also do feedback surveys every quarter, but I haven't found that works great. Like I get a couple back, but like people don't like to fill that out. That one, it's really challenging to get them to do that.
So what have you
sometimes I
heard from
solicit
people when
feedback
you've
in the
DM'd them?
platform.
Do you mind sharing that with me? Like, I mean, I don't mean details. I just meant like, are you getting, here's what I'm wondering. Are you just getting that? Well, yeah, this isn't, I don't know about this and this, or you're actually getting, I'm sorry, I've just been really busy, or I'm focused on something, or because that's all I seem to get from people. Like, I don't, get this. I mean, I actually revolved a whole several months of a call time based on someone's time zone. And I swear I even reminded them about the call. They even said they'd be on the call several times and didn't make the call. And then I was like, okay, any of the calls. And I was like, that's enough. So, you know what I mean? Like I sometimes think that can be a dangerous slippery slope of like trying to revolve things around people who you really want to help. And then they just still don't show up, even when they say they're going to.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think just to step back and put my like growth hat on, because this is like the problem with facing churn. And at tech companies, same thing. We don't know who any of these people are theoretically, and we're trying to understand why they're leaving an app or canceling their subscription or whatever. So you always want to try to identify patterns in behavior. You don't want to over-index on one individual's behavior. You want to identify patterns. So the reason that I'm DMing people is to try to assess the patterns. Is it that the time zones are bad for the live sessions? Is it that people don't like videos and they would prefer an audio feed? Is it that they're confused and they feel lost in the program, right? Like I write down what my questions and assumptions are, and then I'm trying to get that answer from folks so that I actually know the information, that I can put patterns together, not just index off of one person's behavior situation. So I get all kinds of answers back to the DM. I definitely get the, like, I'm busy, I'm not focused on leads right now, which, you know, isn't in the case of my program, which is totally valid and something that's sort of out of my control. If you're, and honestly, like the program has been working so well. I have a few members that are like, I'm totally booked now because the lead gen is going great, which is awesome. And I can't attend sessions anymore because I'm too busy with work. So that's always like a great thing to hear. And then I definitely have folks that are like lost or intimidated. And that is something that I've been hearing a lot.
So you
that
have heard
I
a
am
bit
trying to
about
address.
that. Okay. So you've gotten some good feedback,
Yeah.
because that was my next question is,
Yeah.
have you actually had valuable feedback from those DMs? Okay.
Yes, I have. And then I'm able to point them to, because I think as we were talking before the call, it's really hard. There's often like more value that we're delivering as membership creators than they are able to take
consume.
in.
Yeah.
And yeah. And so I'm able to like guide them and say, oh, you know, we just covered that thing in a more bite-sized way. You can grab it here, right? Or I'm doing a session on this. Why don't you come to that? And, you know, I run through a little list with them. And I do pretty high touch support. So I will really follow up with people because I still am in a place where I need to shape the membership and I need to understand the challenges and things like that. So I'm willing to put in, you know, a lot of that one-on-one time in the DMs and on calls. I did a hot seat today with 2 different members. It's really valuable. It's valuable for them. It's actionable for them, but it's also really valuable for me because I get to hear.
And you have a higher support, higher touch. I mean, I do too. Like I have at least a couple calls every month and I respond to all of the questions and comments usually, unless they're, you know, threads of people talking a lot to each other. It just depends, right? But so tell us a little bit more about your support structure, because I think I want to make sure people know that you are also charging a bit more. It's not a $50 membership. So, you know, maybe you could share with that with us.
Yeah. So right now I do a live onboarding session. I
one-on-one?
call it just a welcome session. No, as a group, small group, live onboarding.
Okay.
So, but I usually offer it like twice during, so I do like a doors open week. My model right now is I launch once a month. We'll see when you guys are watching this video what the changes are. But right now I'm launching once a month. I do a doors open for a week, and the following week I'm doing 2 welcome sessions. And so people join whichever one works for their time zone, because I have folks joining from around the world, which is really cool.
Yeah.
During that session, I give them, you know, the lay of the land, the things that are going to be most actionable to solve the problem that they join the membership to solve. And I, you know, invite them to take action on like adding live sessions to their calendar, downloading. I have a workbook that people get, downloading the workbook, you know, the things that I know will set them up for success. I cover in that session. I also highlight how to get that support from me, because it's really, really important to me that people are reaching out in whatever way they need to.
Yeah.
One of the most interesting things that has been surfaced to me as an aside is that people actually love getting that support from each other and want to connect with each other more. That is becoming more and more important to them, especially when they share an industry or approach. Like I have a few coaches, they want to talk to each other. Or folks that are at the same stage, they're like just getting started with analytics. They want to talk to each other, and that's really cool. And I'm trying to open up ways for them to support each other, which right now I don't have. I've now created more specific channels. I used to actually, when I launched and up until maybe last month, put everything in one channel. So I had one channel of like community chats.
Yeah.
And so I'm now opening up more specific topic-based channels. So because of the, like, I'm intimidated, I feel behind feedback that I was getting, I was like, well, maybe if we have a
you need to
smaller
separate it
arena,
out a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they can know what to ignore, basically, right? They know what to not even browse through. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm also thinking about doing like a new member chat or something like that for folks that are joining, you know, within the last 3 months, where they don't feel dumb asking questions and things like that. I DM people right away when they join, making sure that we have the like lines of communication open, that they know where to find that. And then occasionally I do one-on-ones with people. or I do things like hot seats or group chats, I call them, where
Yeah.
people come together and we can chat through questions, challenges, people can surface issues that they're having.
Yeah. And you're charging a little over $200 a month for memberships, right? So you know,
Yeah.
you're at that point where does make sense for you to put in that extra. And I just want to point that out because I don't want people who are charging like on a volume style membership and that are putting in that extra, because I just think that it's okay to try to do extra, but extra shouldn't be like, now I'm not going to get anyone buying any one-on-one or upgrading to anything because I'm giving them it all for not a lot of money. So because that can also sink us. It's that efficiency issue. If we're not charging enough and we're giving too much away, we don't have a business that's sustainable, right? So yeah, I wanted just to point that out. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
yeah.
it's funny. I talked about this in my newsletter yesterday or today. What day is it? I totally agree. And it's really important to be mindful of that. But I also think like it really helps to have more high touch, even if you have a lower, and you and I may differ on this, Lisa. This might be a point of debate. But I think that even if you have a lower price membership, it really helps to be higher touch in the beginning because you really can shape it and understand what's going wrong. And,
I
and
agree.
that will
I think
help
it's
you
just,
with retention and things like
yeah,
that.
I think it's about knowing the limits though. Like it's about the
Oh,
limits of like, I
yes.
actually have another product for this or like another offer. Like that's what I said. I don't want to, see you be like giving away the things that that are kind of like an upsell or an add-on or an upgrade. That's all. It's like there's a limit to it. Like I said, I'll answer every single question and I'll go back and forth, but I won't necessarily like, oh, let's just jump on a Zoom call, you and I, because that's paid, So yeah. So I think that's just what I'm trying to say is like the difference. I think a lot of people do struggle with like the limits. Like I won't go and do a sales page audit. Like that's again private work. So
yeah.
unless it
I
was
do
part
think
of
those
like
boundaries are really important.
sorry?
I do think those boundaries are really important. And you've really taught me that because I have an issue with that as a human being, but it's like keeping eyes on that and saying, okay, this thing is a lot of effort for me now. How am I going to reduce my effort over time so that this is a legitimately scalable program for me?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So I have two questions for you that are really interesting to me. One of them is that, and I'm just like curious to check in. So how's the monthly open doors working for you? Because I find that I did that for a little while and I wasn't bringing in enough leads, I think, to really make sense of it. Not that I think that there's a minimum to doing it, especially if you're doing it kind of a little bit evergreen, meaning like you're repeating it, but like, how do you launch? You're not launching to your list every month because you would just be super, or are you? Because I just want to know how you're gaining enough new people to open the doors for every month.
Yeah, I'm launching to the wait list every month. I'm launching to the whole list every other month.
Okay.
So if you're on the wait list, you get an opportunity to join once a month. If you're not on the wait list, you hear about it every other month. So it's like not that much that you're hearing about. And if you're not on the wait list, I don't even email you that much during the live launch. Like I let you know that it's happening. So you have an opportunity to get on the wait list and hear about it more. And if not, then you don't hear about it as much. The waitlisters get a lot more emails.
Yeah, no, for
every
sure.
month.
And they're asking to be.
Yeah.
Now, if they are on a wait list and they don't buy, do they stay on the wait list?
They were staying on the wait list, but I'm going to start to take them off now because it helps me to know whether or not I should bother opening doors, right? And to your point, like it is effort, even though it is templatized now. I have like a webinar, I have all the sequences, I have the landing pages, it's not, I honestly did all the doors open work on Sunday night for like 3 hours. Like it wasn't that crazy.
It does take a
I
little bit each time because we make improvements, right?
It does.
Like
you make improvements. It's still energy. It's energy that
and it's mental and emotional.
Members. Yes. So I'm with you. I'm like, don't waste your time. But so the wait list is an indicator of that. And I think I'm going to start clearing it out for that reason. It's like, if you don't want to join in the last couple months, then you're not that interested. And that's totally fine. Yeah. You'll be on the main list and you can have an opportunity to join. I will say though, like I do a lot of relationship building around the membership, like leading up to the membership doors open. And so I spend a lot of time with people in the DMs. If people join my list and they respond to something, like I start chatting with them, I do coffee chats. So I have a good sense of who's going to convert and like what the appetite, like the rising appetite is to get into the program. And I have pretty good conversion off of the wait list. So it helps to know that
Yeah. Okay. That's good. So
time.
this is it. You're starting to track your method and knowing that now getting more people to put their hand up on that wait list is your sign of how it's going to do for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. But to your point, I noticed that in the fall, I actually only launched in August and September, and then I kept doors closed until January, except if you worked with me one-on-one, you got an opportunity to join.
Yeah.
And I noticed that there were people who wanted to join who I did not let in, because I wasn't confident about the onboarding process and wasn't prepared to like do that in a good way, more than one time. I lost those sales. And so I want to get to a place where it's more of an evergreen model, so that if people want the solution now, they can have the solution.
They can buy now kind of thing. Like they learn about you, they can jump in for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Without saying that's the only time they'll ever get to, but it warms them up. I think evergreen's a great warm up for live. I really do. Like I 100% believe that people need to know about you. They need to learn about what your offer is. And then the next time you are able to do something that's live, they can then get to know you or ask a question or just get there. Some people will only join live, but it doesn't mean that they will join instantly. They might wait another few months until you do it live again. Right. So the evergreen is a really low effort. I mean, it takes a bit to set up, but once it's set up, it does prep people.
Yeah. Yep.
And live launching
I need to move towards that model.
Yeah. Well, I really hope to help you with that, because I've done that and it made a big difference. It made a big difference for me. It was, the other thing too about evergreen, I'll say that it boosts, it's great, especially when your visibility activities are robust, like being on a summit of really primed good people that are just like the perfect audience, or hearing you on a podcast where you've had a long interactive conversation with someone they really like. Like I've done really well from things like that people jump into the evergreen and then they're like, okay, I already got to know you and now I'm getting to know what you're selling. So it's just a really like what it is you offer. Works the best for me. So I think that's part of it, is not just having it for strangers, but having people who are already warmed up learn about you.
Yes. Well, yeah. And I think, I don't have like a proper evergreen funnel, but I do talk about the membership in a lot of my marketing. Yeah. So if you're on my email list, if you're listening to me at a summit, if you're listening to me at a podcast, like I'm probably talking about growth trackers. So whatever you first hear about me from, you're hearing about it. And to your point, you're like warming up about, oh, maybe I could solve my problem with this program.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about this thing. This is always I found interesting about you, is this idea that your members graduate, which I think is great. Like, I love that. I love having people think about their membership a little bit more like a program. At that some point they might be done and they might leave. In my case, I feel like more people will leave because they decided like somehow not to do a membership, or they said not now after they joined. And that does happen. And that is totally legit. Like, I'm like, I don't want to keep you if you're not doing anything. But I like the idea of helping people with growth and sales and marketing and conversions basically after they've launched, because I know learning about the program and what to put in it and what to charge and all that is like part one. And then the rest, part one of the 20, and then the rest is all about like how to grow this thing. So you've got a pretty strong, like not policy, but like attitude, is that they will outgrow you. And tell me a little, which I think is healthy, but it also, that might be hard for people to kind of go, oh, you mean somebody's going to be done after like a few months? It's like, that's a pretty big, scary thing for people.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I launched, I launched with that messaging, right? Like my goal is for you to outgrow this program, which is still true. But I found that people stuck around longer than I expected them to.
Because they didn't quite take the action as quickly or get to the,
They either didn't take the action as quickly as I expected them to need to, or they got enough value. Like I actually had one member who joined the program because he was running a business and ended up getting a job during his time with growth trackers,
Yeah.
but still staying in the program because he just loved it and thought it was so valuable, which is an amazing testament to how the program is doing. But people got enough value out of it that they stayed, even if they were reaching the promise of the program.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think so for me, like I really love the early stage validation of businesses. I love the uncertainty and the high stakes of being a startup where you have to make money and you have to find clients. And as a solo small business owner, like you have to be doing that. And if you're having trouble with your lead generation, you're not making enough money, right? So I love that, the high stakes of that. Once you're to the point where it's like, I know where I get my leads from, I know who my audience is, I know what to sell them, then you're in a place of like operationalizing, you're outsourcing, you're putting systems in place, you're trying to make things more efficient.
Or you're
me,
experimenting a bit more. Yeah. With more risky things, like more risky experimentation.
Right. Sure. But it's like the stakes are lower then. A lot of times you're doing smaller tests, right? Like, so, when I used to work with bigger companies, we're doing like a button test, right? Netflix is like testing the language on a button. That stuff's like really boring to me. I want to test, should you do a website or should you do a conference talk? I want the big swing test. I want the validation mode, folks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once it's like, oh, should I like outsource this task, or should I use Trello or Asana to manage? It's like, I honestly, it's just not that interesting to me. So part of the reason I want you to outgrow me is that I want to solve the problem that's going to keep you in business.
Yeah.
And then I want you to go to people who enjoy the like process and system stuff, or content marketers, to your point, who are going to do like a long play strategy with you.
Yeah.
Where it may or may not pay off, and it's going to be like many months before we know.
So you're doing that based on interest, and do you feel like you have to get more and more people in if they're not going to stay? Because a lot of what people like about a membership is that people might stay for a long time, and you might have people who stay for a long time because if they can hop on a call with you and get some like feedback or validation, I mean, that to me is like everybody needs a mentor or an opportunity to get on a call and ask a question. I mean, to me, like that is like, if you don't have that, it's very, very tough to succeed. Even if you're still in a group doing it, like you just need somebody to say, oh, here's what's going on right now in the world, or here's one way I did this. Like, it's just something, right? So
yeah,
you could conceivably have people doing that for a long time. But you're not promising to sell them the next level, like to help them with the next level thing, even though you might be able to do that because good coaches know how to do that.
Yes. Yeah. It's not like I kick anyone out of the program. There's not like a graduation moment. We don't do like a little like hat toss stage thing. So, people have to self-assess that. Like, I've done the thing I came here to do. And so honestly, what I have members doing right now is pausing because they like the program, but they are too busy with the work that they've booked to continue taking advantage of it. And it's too high cost for them to not be taking advantage of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I am thinking about how can I create another tier of the membership that's going to support those folks? Because to your point, even though I think they should graduate onto the next thing, I don't necessarily have a recommendation for what that thing is. There's not like another program out there that pairs with mine that's like, now you go to Lucy's program. Like that doesn't, I don't know what you mean. Yeah. What that thing is. So, to some extent, they still do want the community aspect, or they want to show up to the guest speakers, or they want to learn this month's marketing technique, or they want to get on a hot seat and talk about the thing that they're now launching. So I'm thinking about how to do that, because I believe you get the most value out of the membership when you join, like in the early days of your time with me. And once you're past 6 months in, then you just need a lower level of support from me.
Right. You were actually mentioning that idea of like a lower cost tier, actually, for more maintenance mode.
Yeah.
Which is a
Yes,
really
exactly.
cool
So
idea. I love that. I actually thought about that a little bit myself. I was like, oh, I mean, for some people, I actually want to, well, not to buy a higher thing because I want to give them the hands-on support because I know that they're missing some things and I know what they're missing. And I want to be able to work with them
yeah,
on it with actual feedback. Like, let me review this copy and make some edits, like big, important
yeah,
stuff. Right. So, but yeah, I think the idea for
yeah,
the people who just want to hang out, I love that. It's a
yeah,
great idea.
yeah. A lot of the folks that are hitting pause now are one-on-one clients of mine who have already gotten that level of support, and then the membership was there to sort of pick up
Yeah.
the slack left
Yeah.
over from the one-on-one.
Yeah.
And now they're like in really good shape, and a lot of them are like hiring. They're like, thinking about new offers, new products, not just doing services, things like that. Like, it's really cool to see.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. So, where do you hope to be in your membership by the end of 2023? Like, what would just make you super stoked? Like, tell us more about that.
I mean, my biggest focus is really on getting people the results that they need in the quickest time that I can. Like, I love the challenge of doing that. That is the promise of my membership. I want to be fulfilling that for as many of my members as I can. So that's number one. Two would be, cracking my acquisition and retention. I definitely want to, get more folks in there. I've noticed that members really do benefit from processing things together. So I came into the membership with this bias of like smaller is better for the member experience, but that's not necessarily true. And members want to hear what other people are doing.
Yeah.
And so scaling the membership doesn't just benefit me, it benefits the members themselves. And so I want to grow the membership, and I want to retain members for the time that it takes for them to make sure they have the promise of the program, that they're cracking their lead gen formula. And then by the end of the year, I definitely want to be thinking about how to build that level for the graduates where they can get support.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing all of this with us today. It's so helpful to just talk shop and like, just, these are all details, but they're important details because I hope whoever's listening can kind of come up with like, yes, you can create your own adventure. And there isn't one particular way of doing it, but it's about serving people, serving ourselves in a way that we enjoy it. And then knowing kind of what we're there to do and always reminding ourselves of that. So it's been super amazing. And
what a great way to put that, Lisa.
Where can
Thank you for all your support.
Yeah, no, it's been fun. It's been fun because you're good at showing up and you're never afraid to ask a question when you have one. And I think, you're one of those ideal members in that you actually, like, I can trust that you are going to ask for what you need and like help kind of hack out the question sometimes. Like, we don't even all know what our question is, right? But sometimes if we never start the question, we don't know what the question is. Like, we almost have to start it before we're like really clear on what it is. And it's okay to be like that. It's okay to figure it out. And I love our conversation. So it's been super fun.
Yeah.
Where can people find you online? On all the places.
I'm most active on Instagram. You can DM me at supereasydoesit. And you can find my membership at supereasydigital.com/growth trackers.
Awesome. Well, I hope you guys all go and follow Lex because she's got some great low key, but still active ways of kind of connecting with people. Just really great person to follow and all that. So thanks again for being here.
Thanks for having me, Lisa.